In part 1 you saw me install the high level shelf and the central vertical support. The depth of the shelf and the support were governed by the available walk space. You can just see return on the separating wall there at the bottom of the screen. That kind of depicts the amount of depth we can have for the entire build, and also there's a little radiator on the right hand wall which kind of governed how far we could come out. So as I said, part 1 was all about setting out the available space we had, and now we're on to making the cabinets. I suppose you could say we're on to the build proper. All of the cabinets are going to be made from ash veneered MDF. Couldn't get ash veneered ply at the time, so we went for MDF. With either one really, I knew that we were going to have to put an ash lipping on, so it kind of doesn't make that much of a difference using MDF over ply. As being in a bedroom, it's a very dry and stable environment, so the MDF was good. The construction for the cabinets is going to be using dominoes. The dominoes give me perfect location for all the panels, and using the MFT table and the stop on the rail, it makes it really easy to cut all of the panels to exactly the same size. Instantly I had the 8x4 sheets delivered back to the workshop, and I sliced them down to 600mm widths, popped them in the van, and then brought them all up to site. It worked out easier that way, actually much more efficient to do it that way. And you can see from the video shots that there's lots of other woodwork on this site in this job, so I'm not there just doing the wardrobe. So I'm doing the hardwood flooring, all of the skirtings, the architraves, the doors, a staircase to install. I've got the banisters and handrails, so there's lots of other work for me to go to when I've got to force pause with this wardrobe build. So anyway, back to the build. All of the cabinets are dry assembled first and all slid into place, complete with any boo-boos you can see. And then once I've got them all dry assembled and all in, it's then time for level up. Now at this point I've got to mention the fact that the cabinets are well oversized widthways. I made a decision right at the early part of the build that I wasn't going to size them initially because I knew the wall was badly out. So I've decided to make them all over width, over depth if you like, and level just using the tops. And as you can see here, my approach is to make my own little scribing tool as I go. So at this point I hadn't found that super duper scribing tool, which there's a video on, I'll link to it below. But I used the little plastic packers that come with the plastic windows, UPVC windows, or you can buy them in Screwfix and the such like. Absolutely brilliant. You get 1 through to 8mm sizes, I think. So I'll pack the cabinets up, get them level, scribe the line that I need, and then cut them to size. So it's scribed down to the floor first, and when I've got them all level, then I can scribe them back into the wall. And you'll see in a minute how far the wall is out. It was really a lot of scribing on this job. Hit the nail on the head there, I think. With the cabinets all level to the floor, I could move on to scribing all 4 cabinets back to the wall. I did that all at the same time and then cut them all at the same time. So normally I would now be ready to screw all the cabinets back to the wall, but with this build and my earlier decision, it was now time to cut them all to depth, governed by that high level shelf center support, and made superbly easy with track saw. Fantastic bit of kit. If you don't have one, get one. It'll really make your life so much easier. cut out for a toe kick, and then gluing on the ash lipping at the front. When you're using MDF ash veneered, or veneered panels I should say, then you've got to cover up that ugly exposed front section, and I chose to do it with rather a thick piece of lipping. The idea was that if it's going to get banged, it's nice and solid, looks lovely, deep enough for it to be the dominant piece that the eye catches when you open the drawer. A fiddly nuisance and loads of clamps needed, but well worth it. Because I'd chosen to use such a thick lipping, I had to use a bear and guided flush trim bit with a support panel on the back, and it worked fine, but I could have got away with thinner lipping. I could have dropped to, well, 5mm would have been fine actually, and then I would have been able to avoid using this trim router with that flush trim bit and going to the trouble of leveling up a support piece on the back and moving the clamps, etc, etc. Like I say, it did the job. I was able to get it done, but at this point in the build I had not considered using an alternative bit of kit that I've got in the cupboard, or I had in the cupboard at home, that would have been so much more appropriate, but we'll see that come out later. So with all of the fronts trimmed, it's time for the glue up. Pretty straightforward, nice square cuts on everything, so pop the dominoes in for alignment, nice bit of glue everywhere, clamp them up and set them to one side. Being able to pop a screw in to act as an additional clamp is superb. It just makes life so much easier. Screws hold it together while I get the clamps in place, and my MFT square from Woodpecker, couldn't live without that. Well worth the money. This is one of those little jobs that I hinted at earlier that I could turn to while I was waiting for glue to go off on the various stages throughout the build. Now, as we can see, the glue's gone off and it's time to connect the cabinets together and then screw them back to the wall on the plain piece of MDF you could see at the back. Filler pieces either side, and the cabinets are done. So now I'm on to the countertops, and the countertops, again, I prepared, jointed, plain, squared and jointed them back in the workshop, and then brought them to site to glue them together. It just made it easier for transportation. The smaller bits, fine, I could have carried them from the workshop to the van, but the larger section that you'll see in a minute, that would have been quite a bit of a strain on my poor old back, so that's why I decided to glue them all together on site. I wish I started using tape with those clamps when I first got them. With the larger countertop, I took exactly the same approach that I did with the high level shelves. I made myself a template, took 2 bits of MDF so I could scribe into each end, and then joined them together with another piece of MDF. Drew the size of the template out on the countertop and then cut it down. The back was the scribe, the front's a lovely straight cut. Actually, the 2 ends were a straight cut because of the panels either side. But they weren't a 90-degree cut. And then once I was happy with everything, bevel top and bottom at the front, and at the ends. This was a little bit tricky, balancing the rotor, and it was very nearly an error. We're going to try and do this without grunting like a pair of rutting pigs. Ready?
Yeah.
If you've never heard rutting pigs, they make quite a noise. One of the joys of living in the country. A lovely fit, if I say so myself. Same approach with this little piece. But the next piece didn't need to template, as I had one open end. I could just scribe the end and then scribe the back. The countertops are fixed down with tabletop brackets so that the timber's got the ability to move and breathe if it needs to. And that really completes the carcass build. So at this point I'm on to making the drawers, and again very similar approach, the only difference being this is 12mm ash veneered. Cut them all to length and then cut them to width, and this width is actually the height of the drawer. I've got 8 300mm high drawers, and then 3 200mm and 3 100mm. And this little Festool table saw really came into its own. Absolutely superb. Video coming soon. Because I'm using undermount drawers on this build, and in actual fact this is the first time I've ever used the Blum undermount drawers, I've got to say they're absolutely superb. I love them to the point where I'll be using them in future in the workshop. The action on them is super smooth. Love the soft close. Just a so much better system. And much easier too. Once you get your head around the sizing that you need, front to back sizing is critical. You just need to get it exactly the same size as the drawer runner that you've bought. So again, my approach with the drawers is exactly the same as with the cabinets. I'm doing a dry assembly on all of them, held together with pocket screws as you just saw. Get all of them in at rough height, and then I can size them all, and once again add some ash lipping to the top to hide that joint between and the exposed part of the MDF. With clamping the drawers, I found it much easier to loose fit the parallel clamps and then clamp the bar of the parallel clamp using the one-handed clamps as you've just seen me do. and it kept everything in line superbly. It did take me a while to figure that out. And this is a little hole location jig that you can buy for the blung drawers. I really don't recommend doing it without it. It's a little overpriced. I think it was 50 quid or 60 quid, but it just means you can get everything in exactly the right place. And these are the little drawer locking components that go on the front underside, and when you slide them in, you know when you've got it right, because you get like a double click from them. You'll hear it in 2 ticks. 2 ticks for a click. And as mentioned, the action is just super smooth. Perfect. So now I'm taking the drawers apart again so that I can size them height-wise to exactly the size I want, and then add the trim. Now, this isn't for assembly afterwards. This is so that I can put some masking tape on to cover that part of the bottom shelf that's going into the rebate, because Drew and Laura, the owners, are going to wonderfully, and thank you very much guys, they're going to apply the finish to the inside of the drawer. Polyvine heavy duty varnish, 3 coats, denibbed in between coats, and they did them all so that when we glued the drawers together, the insides were completely finished. It worked out really, really well. Now with the drawers, I've decided to go for a 10mm lipping. The reason for that was, I hinted at it earlier, I'm going to be using a different tool to trim the lipping back flush with the face of the ash MDF. And this is what I've gone with. Why I didn't use this before, I really don't know. This tool is absolutely superb at any trim work. The size of the registration face you've got makes it all but impossible to get it wrong, to tip. It's a brilliant bit of kit. And again, video coming up on it soon. It really is worth having a serious think about whether you could justify the expense of the tool. My nearest and dearest there, or boss, whichever way you'd like to term it, is just making sure we don't get any squeeze out or glue drips on the inside, because they're all finished. Bless her, I was extremely grateful for her help. Hope she hears that. And then with the lipping in place, the drawers go back in for the last time. I just love that. So on to the drawer fronts. Once again, I made the drawer fronts up back at the workshop, brought them up to site so that I could cut each one into place. I wanted to make sure that the vertical joints, gaps and the horizontal were all in perfect alignment, so I could get that lovely crisp finish that you'll see at the end of the video. So I took the same approach with all the drawer fronts, dropped them into place, cut the left hand side, cut the right hand side, and then cut them to height. Again with the PVC window packers, superb. Makes life so much easier. At this point in the build, we thought we knew what we wanted for a drawer pull for a handle, but weren't quite sure. So I was waiting for a delivery of some finger pull router bits that thankfully arrived just in time. And I tried them out with the router using a guide fence just on a piece of scrap, and it gave the profile that they liked, which was great because they're not cheap, but it meant that they really needed to be done on the router table in order to achieve consistency and a good finish. It was just too easy to tip with the handheld router at the end of the drawer, which would have looked terrible. So once I got them all in place and sized, they all had to come off and travel back down to the workshop with me. I did actually consider buying a little smaller maneuverable transportable router table, but decided against it purely because of where the hell am I going to put it when the job's done. Workshop's full enough as it is. It's 32 steps from my van to the workshop. And throughout this job, with the amount of time that I had to bring stuff back and take it back up again, I got quite a bit of exercise. So I did this in 3 passes so as not to overload the bit. And also to make sure I didn't get any tear out either. That would have been really, really bad at this point in the game. You can see using the router table just makes it so simple. I really, really like this as a drawer handle finger pull approach, much more than previous drawer handles that I've made. And you can see in this shot the various different ones. I think I'm going to be forced to remake some drawer fronts. So back on site now, and the last job before the drawer fronts go on, and indeed we move to the finish line, is the bevel. This little detail that we've got running throughout the entire build. I had to be really careful on that edge because the bearing would run into the gap on the drawer pull profile. Remounting the drawer fronts, you might think is a bit fiddly, but if you put the screws back in so that they just project, they'll sort of self-locate back into the holes from the previous mounting. So it was maybe a little fiddly to get them lined up, but once they're lined up, you know that they're going back in the perfect place. Hope that makes sense. As I'm putting these in for the last time, I keep looking down the lines, making sure everything's lining up, and I gotta admit, I'm feeling pretty good at this point. Rather pleased with me. Well, that's it. I'm done. Not the whole job, just the wardrobe and the bedroom. And I thought just before I let you see the final thing in all of its glory, I'd give you a little bit of a perspective of where it is, the room that it's in, a quick walkthrough if you like. So this is the entrance to the bedroom. We're in a little raised area here to the left. This was just a bare chipboard top, so I laid some hardwood flooring on it on a nice 3mm underlay, and we've got an ash kind of plinth surround at the top because that matches in with the ash framing on the outer edge here. And again, we've put an ash vertical on it just to make it look framed really. And on the left hand side, kind of a handrail, almost a simulated handrail, half the width of the newel posts that they've got in the house, again in ash, and keeping this bevel theme, which you'll see runs all the way around, and on the joints there everything's beveled so it matches in. Top of the stair stringer, I've scribed in a little piece of ash just to take out the unsightly gap that was there. So there's the door. Into the left up there's the study. So all the flooring I've laid, the staircase I've fitted, handrail and ash framing I've just been through, all the doors, architrave, the threshold, door thresholds, again I've made out of solid ash. And then we come into the room proper. So if I back up a little bit, it's a lovely sized room. And if I walk up onto the raised plinth, you can just see the edge of the wardrobe around the corner. So I'll come back down into the room again. And then in these almost full height windows, we've got a lovely piece of natural yew that Laura picked up, and it wasn't quite deep enough, so I've added again a piece of ash to the back, a couple of dominoes and a little glue joint just to fill it so that the edge of the end of the natural edge comes right to the furthest point of the skirting mitre. And we've done that in both windows. And if I stand with my back to the window, you can see the top of the wardrobe and the little separator wall that I've put an ash topper on. Call it an ash topper. You could call it a shelf as well if you like. Not part of the build, but beautiful, two pieces of ash jointed together. And here's the view from the other side, and mitred around the corner. And if I do say so myself, that's a beautiful mitre. Anyway, self-praise is no praise. And here's the wardrobe. Because of the wall, a full shot isn't quite possible, but there it is. And again, ash tops, ash divider that you saw in the first video, and ash drawer fronts that you've just seen me make. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Any questions or comments, let me know down below. See you next time. Ta-ra.